The FBI goes after the Mar-a-Lago resort, allegedly looking for documents. But this election season just got interesting, you guys, because there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of precedent that's been broken here, and there is a lot about a certain phone call that we do need to discuss in the light of this happening. So we'll be talking about that, and I'm not going to lie, that's probably going to be the majority of what we talk about on the program today. But if we should be able to move off of this into something else, the Senate Democrats eliminated the carried interest loophole from the budget bill that they've just passed. So we'll be talking about that, what that means, and how this is going to upset their fans once again. The Florida prosecutor, Andrew Warren, vows that he will retaliate against Ron DeSantis for his firing. So we'll go over just a bit about what's going on with that. And Amazon has agreed to purchase Roomba, iRobot's product, and iRobot's company themselves. And a lot of people from both sides of the aisle have actually correctly come out and identified this as quite dangerous. It is going to be all of this and more. Welcome back to election season. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, Ed Heads. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and, well, this is going to be another one of those where we say that we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff here, and again, I have a massive collection of tabs going across the top of the screen, but it's, as we've done numerous times with this program, this is probably going to focus on just one issue, one news story, and the fallout from that. I mean, the Russia invasion, we've done it like that. I mean, we've done entire shows on KTZed Redemption when we still did that show, where it was just one topic through the entire thing. But we've got to talk about what's going on with Mar-a-Lago, and that's going to be pretty much dominating the news cycle today. So we'll talk about that. We will actually, before we go into that, we'll talk about Olivia Newton-John too. We'll talk about the finances we usually do, but we'll try to fly through the finance so we can get into it. But yeah, it does look too like this honestly feels like this might be trying to hide and cover up for some of the other things that are going on in the administration. I mean, we're looking at this right now, and there were big questions about what was going on with the tax and spend bill, the Inflation Reduction Act. I don't think anybody's going to be talking about that anymore, although we need to. And it's going to be very important, by the way, even though we're going to be doing long shows like this, that we stop and talk and discuss what's in bills like the Inflation Reduction Act. We do have to take some time and talk about this because they're going to try to throw bread and circus like this at us and distract us from this. So, but we do, I mean, this is one of the reasons I criticize myself for getting distracted for things like this, but still focusing on the big news stories like that, is that something like this, or something like the war in Ukraine, or a number of other things that we've talked about over the months, the Roe versus Wade thing. They do change the course of politicality in this country. And by the way, I do have to make sure I get out of here at some sort of a decent hour today, because today is also primary day in my state. And I do need to go back and vote for a Trump-backed candidate. So, let's get started. Let's get into it. Before we do, make sure you guys go check out the Daily Ignoramus, the Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, and the Porch Boys. Make sure you guys go over to the Porch Boys tonight and kindly tell one Mr. John the Mausolist of Tavs for me, which I will also be there as well, because the man just got hitched, and I know I've made fun of him yesterday. I'm making fun of him today again, because Mr. Anti-State, Mr. I hate the state so much, this guy makes me look like a state worshiper. That's how much that guy hates the state. Did not do a church wedding, did not do a religious wedding, went down to the courthouse and begged the state to give him permission to have sex with his wife. I love you, John. I really do. But the jokes write themselves. Come on. Come on. All right, let's get into it. Let's get started. A few smiles before we get into what's going to be a serious topic. All right, starting with the finance and the Dow. The Dow eked out a slight win yesterday, and it was a struggle. It definitely was. The Dow closing out to 32.8, 32.54 after running a marathon session. It did jump. It spiked at the beginning of the day, but then it dropped and just kind of did the bouncing ball thing throughout the rest of the day. Like, oh, it's down, oh, it's up, oh, it's down, oh, it's up. Ending itself to 32.8, 32.54. Looking in at the Bitcoin. Across today, Bitcoin took a fairly significant 500-point tumble. 23,237 US dollars and 90 US cents is the price per one Bitcoin. That is down on the day at 579 US dollars and 60 US cents, or 2.43%. Just on today, backing this out to 5 days to see where we were at before, it does look like it was starting to struggle throughout the day yesterday, dropping down, trying to claw its way back, and then dropping down once again before today's major drop-off. So there's probably some things to look at in the finance, and hell, with the Biden admin coming out and saying that they were going to crack down on Bitcoin, and now actually using the DOJ to go after a former president, I would probably be out of that currency too if it was me, so we'll be talking just a bit about that. As far as the fuel goes, 338 is the standard across the Madison area, with a couple 339 stragglers here. And we're actually, when I looked yesterday, a little bit lower down in Janesville as well. So some of the prices are coming in. There's some reprieve coming off of that, which you're going to need before we become all wage slaves to the Biden admin and the people that are up there. Let's see what IBD has to say. Like I said, we're going to be flying through a lot of this. So Dow Futures market rally faces key inflation report. COVID vaccine maker crashes on earnings. From Scott Latonin. Dow Futures were lower after Monday's stock market advertisement came back up to the top of the screen. Dow Futures were lower after Monday's stock market action. On Wednesday, a key inflation report, the Labor Department's CPI, is due out, and Nvidia stock dove more than 6% after the chip giant issued a revenue warning in the current quarter. American International, Novavax, Shockwave Medical, and Take-Two Interactive were key earnings movers after the close on Monday. AIG shares rose more than 1%. Vaccine maker Novavax crashed 33% after cutting its 2022 revenue guidance due to lack of demand for its Pinko-Pox vaccine. Shockwave jumped nearly 8% in early trade. Video game maker Take-Two tumbled around 7%. Yeah, I actually wonder how many people are going out and getting boosted now. I know that Dr. Fauci is saying we might need a 5th booster now, so go and get your shot because we got another wave coming around here. And get another booster because I need to line my pocketbook with more money coming out of Novavax. But where's the panic? There's no incentive driver to go back and get the next booster here. So your vaccine makers who made a crap ton of money, by the way, off of this vaccine, are probably now looking at this and saying, crap, what do we do now? Meanwhile, Parigio, Planet Fitness, and Ralph Lauren will report ahead of Tuesday's open. On Monday, the Dow Industrial rose 0.1% versus fair value, while the S&P moved down 0.1%. The tech-heavy Nasdaq declined 0.1%, extending Friday's mild losses. So, a little bit of good news off the Dow, but everybody else is looking downward right now. Among ETFs, the Nasdaq Invesco QQQ Trust dropped 0.3%, and the SPDR S&P 500 fell 0.1%. Graphics chipmaker Nvidia sparked a sell-off in chip stocks on Monday after warning that its revenue outlook for its fiscal second quarter would fall short of previous estimates. The company announced preliminary sales of $6.7 billion for its quarter ended July 31st. It previously forecast sales of $8.1 billion for the period. It will announce official results on August 24th. The VanEck Semiconductor ETF declined 1.7% on Monday. Fellow chip stock Advanced Micro Devices dropped more than 2%. Elsewhere, Tesla slashed gains to 0.8% Monday. Among Dow Jones leaders, Apple and Microsoft lost 0.3% and 0.9% respectively in today's stock market. In the strengthening stock market environment, Dow Jones stocks Coca-Cola and United Health, as well as Monolithic Power Systems, Ollie's, Bargain Outlet. That's a place that's probably going to boom in the upcoming recession and possible depression. And Vertex Pharmaceuticals are among the top stocks to buy and watch. United Health and Vertex are IBD leaderboard stocks. Ollie's and Vertex were featured in this week's Stocks Near a 5-Zone column. Gee, I wonder why. Vertex is also an IBD swing trader stock. On the futures, ahead of the open, Dow futures fell 0.15% versus fair value, while the S&P lost 0.4%, the Nasdaq dropped 0.7%. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. The 10-year yield ticked lower to 2.76, giving up part of Friday's surge. The 10-year yield is trying to rebound after hitting its lowest level since early April. Meanwhile, oil prices rebounded more than 1.5%, with West Texas Intermediate futures trading above $90 a barrel. Labor Department's CPI will come out early Wednesday. Consumer prices are expected to rise 0.2% in July, down from June's 1.3% jump per Econoday estimates. Still, inflation is expected to surge 8.7% in July from a year ago, easing from June's 9.1% year-over-year rise. And remember, when we look at the year-over-year, Biden is going to go out and do a little jig before he breaks his hip and falls down. And all of your Twitter friends are going to remind you, oh, it's coming down. Biden saved the economy. Inflation is coming down. And they're not going to remind you that at this point last year, inflation was peaking over 5% versus the 4 and some change from the month earlier, which means you're going 8.7% on top of the 5.1% from last year. And that's if it goes down. They've got a very, very terrible track record of predicting this. In fact, whenever they say it's going to come and tick down to 8.7 or 8.6 or 8.5, it a lot of times ticks back up. So we'll see what happens with that and where that goes. Let's check with Market Watch, and, well, we'll get into the news that we've got to talk about today. Dow ekes out gain as stocks end mostly lower, with investors awaiting next U.S. inflation report. From Vivian Luchen and William Watts. The S&P and the Nasdaq failed to hold on to earlier gains on Monday, while the Dow finished slightly higher as investors await this week's Consumer Price Index report for July, which could lead to expectations of Fed tightening. What drove the market? Stocks struggled to hold on to earlier gains after all three major indices initially opened higher on Monday, with the investors gauging whether recent pessimism over corporate prospects has been overdone. Traders were also hoping a robust labor market would challenge recent evidence of a slowing U.S. economy, while a generally well-received second quarter company earnings season comes to a close. But last week's strong jobs report for July makes it more difficult for investors to entertain the idea that the Fed will relent on its rate hike plans anytime soon. According to Morgan Stanley equity strategist Michael Wilson, the strong labor report on Friday suggests companies have yet to cut labor in an effort to protect margins while simultaneously delaying any Fed pivot. Wilson writes in a note. Or a lot of people either got second jobs or new full-time jobs, which were probably crappier, or summer jobs, because we are starting to see the layoffs come in, Robinhood being the notable example of this. The market now faces some technical challenges heading into Wednesday's CPI report for July, according to some observers, with 4,200 seen as a key resistance level for the S&P 500. So, that's what we're going to watch for this as we go on through, as we figure out what's going to happen here. Let's pay our respects, first and foremost. Olivia Newton-John, singer and actress, dead at 73. And they're going to play some clips of her on CNN. But let's read here. Olivia Newton-John, the Australian singer whose breathy voice and wholesome beauty made her one of the biggest pop stars of the 70s and charmed generations of viewers in the blockbuster movie Grease, died on Monday. According to a statement from her husband, she was 73. Dame Olivia Newton-John passed away peacefully at her ranch in Southern California this morning. Surrounded by friends and family, we ask that everyone please respect family's privacy during this very difficult time. Her husband, John Easterling, wrote in a statement on the singer's verified Instagram account. Olivia has been a symbol of triumphs and hope for over 30 years, sharing her journey with breast cancer. The singer revealed in September of 2018 she was treating cancer at the base of her spine. It was her third cancer diagnosis, following bouts with breast cancer in the early 90s and 2017. Thanks to a string of country and soft rock hits, Newton-John was already a popular singer by the late 70s, but her co-starring role opposite John Travolta in 1978's Grease, arguably the most popular movie musical of all time, lifted her to a new level of stardom. True story, I didn't see Grease until... How old was I? 25? I think? Yeah, that sounds about right. I saw a stage production, a high school stage production of Grease before I saw Grease. Although she had little acting experience and turned 29 during filming, Newton-John gave an indelible performance as Sandy, a sweet-natured Australian transfer student who romances Travolta's alpha greaser Danny at a Southern California high school in the 50s. Wow, she was 30 in that movie? Bravo, genetics and makeup department. Their on-screen chemistry as mismatched lovebirds who undergo final act makeovers to win each other's hearts. She ditches her frilly dresses for heels, leather, spandex, and a cigarette, anchored the movie and inspired repeat viewings by legions of fans. I don't think anyone could have imagined a movie would go on almost 40 years and still be popular. People would still be talking about me and loving all the time and loving it, Newton-John told CNN in 2017. It's just one of those movies. I was very lucky to have been part of it. It's given so many people pleasure. Newton-John sang on 3 of the movie's biggest hits, the duets You're the One That I Want, Summer Nights with Travolta, and her swoony solo ballad, Hopelessly Devoted to You. Born in Cambridge, England in 1948, Newton-John moved with her family to Melbourne when she was 5, after winning a talent contest on the TV show Sing Sing Sing. As a teen, she formed an all-girl group and began appearing in weekly pop music programs in Australia. Newton-John recorded her first single in England in 1966 and scored a few international hits, but she remained largely unknown to U.S. audiences until 1973 when Let Me Be There became a top 10 hit on both the adult contemporary and the country charts. A series of number 1 easy listening hits following, including I Honestly Love You, Have You Ever Been Mellow, and Please Mr. Please. Then came Grease, which was 1978's top grossing movie and became an enduring cultural phenomenon. The movie gave Newton-John an opportunity to change her squeaky clean image. The cover of her next album, Totally Hot, featured the singer in black leather, while its songs had an edgier, more contemporary sound. So, we send Olivia Newton-John into the next life. I, as always, hope that she found the Lord and Savior. But if not, I hope that whatever she believes in brings her peace in the next life. She was an icon. I mean, I remember still to this day, and it triggered in my memory as soon as I saw the story yesterday, that one of the first music videos I remember seeing on VH1 was Physical. So, and then wondering where all the fat people were starting to become ripped, and how it was happening, and how I could do that, and, you know, now I'm trying to get there myself, but not knowing that it was a trick of actors at the time, but still. Let's grab one from the BBC on the same topic. Olivia Newton-John tributes to Grease star and singer dies, age 73. From Francesca Gillette and Matt Murphy. Tributes have been paid from around the world to Olivia Newton-John, who has died from cancer, age 73. The British-born Australian singer and actress was best known for playing Sandy in Grease, one of the most successful film musicals ever made. Her Grease co-star, John Travolta, said, "She made all of our lives so much better," while its director said, "What you see is what you get with her." She died peacefully in her California ranch, surrounded by family and friends. An actress and musician, Newton-John achieved commercial success as a country singer and sold millions of records globally, but it was her role as Sandy in Grease that catapulted her to worldwide fame. Let's see. Rod Stewart called her the perfect lady, gorgeous with great poise and a certain Aussie sophistication. Her spandex trousers in Grease were my inspiration for "Do You Think I'm Sexy" era, he added, referencing the iconic tight black leather outfit that she wore at the film's end. Oprah said her positivity was just infectious. "You'll be missed, Olivia. Here's to good times." Travolta wrote on Instagram, "Your impact was incredible. I love you so much. We will see you down the road, and we will all be together again. Yours from the first moment I saw you, and forever," he added, signing off, "You're Danny, you're John." Randy Cleaser said he'd been friends with Newton-John for 40 years, and she never changed. She was always exactly the way everyone imagines her. She was charming, lovely, warm. There are so many cliches you can say about her, but in her case it was all true. Asked what his everlasting memory of her will be, he told BBC Radio 5 Live, hanging out with her at the ranch, seeing the real Olivia, which was exactly like the Olivia she projected. No cameras around, no people around. She was exactly the same and loving as ever. Other tributes came from singers Kylie Minogue, who called her an inspiration, and Dionne Warwick, who called Newton-John one of the nicest people I had the pleasure of recording and performing with. Marlee Matlin, who co-starred alongside Newton-John in the 96 film It's My Party, called her the sweetest and brightest light in a Twitter tribute. So, a lot of people had a lot of respect for the woman. And even into her 60s and 70s, she still looked like that. So, and I'm sure there's a lot of plastic surgery that went into that. Let's not lie. But that is what we get for that. Now that we have sent off a celebrity, somebody that probably affected a lot of our lives, just based on the movie that all of our parents made us watch when we were younger, or in my case, mid-20s. Let's get into the main news of the day. From Fox 17. FBI search warrant executed at former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home. This changes a lot of things. This really does. Before we go into finding the details, and some of this I'll be learning for the first time, I want to say something. A lot of people even on the left, have looked at this and said, Garland had better have the goods. There are a lot of people to the left of politics right now who think that Trump should be in prison just for the fact that he ever came down the escalator, and try to convince you and gaslight you that they always hated him, even though he was one of the pinnacles of society. There are a lot of people right now that recognize the fact that this was a dangerous event to happen. This was not something that should have been done, unless they actually specifically have what they were looking for. They cannot afford to botch this. And I'm going to be interested to see if they actually have what they came off of this. There's something to keep in mind off of this. Hillary Clinton, during the debates, said, I'm glad you're not president right now. And Donald Trump leaned over to the microphone and said, because you'd be in jail. And yet, never did use the DOJ to go after her. In spite of what I look at and see as still, to this day, plenty of evidence to go back after her. Because in this country, we've never been a banana republic. We don't use official channels, the DOJ, etc., to go after political enemies. This was the basis for impeachment 1.0, and the reason that we still can't say Erica Marshmallow's real name on air, on YouTube, without getting our streams taken down and getting community guideline strikes. And the worst part of that all was at the time, Joe Biden hadn't even announced his candidacy yet. This man got impeached over a phone call asking for details as to what was happening in the Ukraine. Because it was such an egregious idea that he could possibly be going after a political rival. And again, a political rival that had not announced his candidacy yet. That's the context I want to put into this right now. On top of that, now we have an actual direct political rival, not only from a previous election cycle, but the person who, while yes, that's correct, he hasn't actually announced candidacy yet, is the most likely frontrunner to be the candidate for the next presidential cycle. And this is the most important part, and I mentioned this on this channel before. The head of the DOJ, whom the head of the FBI answers to, the person who would have ordered the FBI to go through and do this, is the Supreme Court nominee that this man passed over. And Merrick Garland, if he has any shred of credibility whatsoever, needs to recuse himself from this investigation yesterday. And with that being said, let's read this. From Doug Jones. The FBI executed a search warrant on Monday at Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort at Palm Beach, Florida, while investigating the handling of presidential documents. As CNN reported, the former president was not in Florida when the FBI search warrant was executed. Axios reported that Trump was in New York City at the time. Trump said his Florida residence and resort were raided by FBI agents. Trump released a statement on Monday, writing that his beautiful home was currently under siege. Agents seemed to be focused on an area of the club where Trump's personal residence and offices were located, according to CNN, citing a source familiar with the situation. Trump released a statement on his Truth Social platform, writing, "After working and cooperating with the relevant government agencies, this unannounced raid on my home was not necessary or appropriate. It wasn't... Get out Trump voice. It wasn't immediately clear what the specific reason for the FBI raid was. I have a few ideas. Or what specific part of investigation it was connected to. Trump wrote in a statement, "Nothing like this has ever happened to a president of the United States before," he said, or a first lady, or a vice president rather, who was a presidential nominee, or a Speaker of the House, or an Attorney General for that matter. Here is a statement. "These are dark times for our nation, as my beautiful home, Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, is currently under siege, raided, and occupied by a large group of FBI agents. Nothing like this has ever happened to a president of the United States before. After working and cooperating with the relevant government agencies, this unannounced raid on my home was not necessary or appropriate. It's prosecutorial misconduct. It's the worst, okay? The weaponization of the justice system and an attack by the radical left, they're the worst. Democrats who desperately don't want me to run for president in 2024, especially based on recent polls, and who likewise do anything to stop Republicans and conservatives in the upcoming midterm elections. Such an assault could only take place in broken third world countries. They're the worst, okay? They're shithole countries. Sadly, America has now become one of those countries, corrupt at a level not seen before. They even broke into my safe, my precious safe, okay? What is the difference between this and Watergate, where operatives broke into the DNC? Here, in reverse, Democrats broke into the home of the 45th President of the United States, the greatest president, your favorite, okay? The political persecution of President Donald J. Trump, your favorite president, has been going on for years. With a now fully debunked Russia scam, it's the worst, okay? And impeachment hoax number 1, impeachment hoax number 2, can you believe it? They did that to me again. And so much more. It just never ends. The political targeting of the highest level, okay? Hillary Clinton was allowed to delete and acid wash 33,000 emails after they were subpoenaed by Congress, smashing the phones with the hammers, okay? Absolutely nothing has happened to hold her accountable. She even took antique furniture and other items from the White House. I stood up to America's bureaucratic corruption. I restored power to the people and truly delivered to our country like we've never seen before. The establishment hated it. Now, as they watch my endorsed candidates win big victories, huge, okay, and see my dominance at the polls, they're trying to stop me in the Republican Party. Once again, the great Republican Party that I created. The lawlessness, political persecution, and witch hunt must be exposed and stopped. I will continue to fight for the great American people. CNN reported that FBI executed a warrant at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort, located in Palm Beach. It fully confirmed the move will signal the Department of Justice's investigation into the January 6th Selfie Fest is honing in on Trump himself. Trump claimed agents broke open a safe, which, if accurate, as the New York Times, a former newspaper, reported, would be one of the biggest escalations in the multiple investigations into the former president. Bloomberg reported that the White House has referred questions about the raid to the DOJ. So that's Article 1, and we go all the way down to here, talking about this. So let's keep going. The USA Today, what's happening at Trump's Mar-a-Lago home? Was the FBI there? Answers to your questions. This is going to be a fairly short one. What's happening at Trump's Mar-a-Lago home? Was the FBI there? Answers your questions from Sergio Bustos, Kevin Johnson, David Jackson, Ledger King, Francesca Chambers, and Luciana Lopez. Former President Trump said on Monday that FBI agents raided his home in Palm Beach, Florida, called Mar-a-Lago. The DOJ declined to comment, and Trump himself, in a statement, did not say why the agents were there. What exactly happened on Monday, and why? The latest from the Florida search: law enforcement agents searched Trump's Florida home on Monday. Two people familiar with the matter told USA Today the action was connected to Trump's alleged removal of documents from the White House to his Mar-a-Lago property when his term in office was over. Trump also claimed that agents searched his safe, but did not elaborate. "They even broke my safe, my wonderful safe," he said in a statement. The FBI notified the Secret Service in advance of law enforcement action, allowing for federal investigators access to the former president's property, according to a person familiar with the matter. What's about to happen? It remains to be seen what documents or other items may have been removed from property, or how those items might relate to an investigation. Trump, along with as many of his key allies, is under investigation for a range of issues, from the January 6th selfie fest to Trump family business dealings. There's no word yet on how Monday's action by law enforcement could impact any of these probes. Top takeaways: the raid marks an escalation in law enforcement scrutiny of the former president. Legal analysts say this would have been approved at the highest levels of law enforcement. Under the law, any search would need to be authorized by a federal judge after finding probable cause that a crime had been committed and that evidence of the crime exists in the location to be searched. I kind of want to know which judge did this. That's one of the big questions that I have, and a question there is going to be, who's the appointment? What's the connection? Is there a connection to this administration? What they're saying: in a statement, Trump railed against the search. "These are dark times for our nation, as my beautiful home, Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, is currently under siege, raided and occupied by a large group of FBI agents. Nothing like this has ever happened to a president. It's hugely significant, huge, okay, but also, I think, predictable to a certain degree, right, because he's currently that's Andrew McCabe. Because he's currently the subject of a number of criminal investigations," former FBI Director Andy McCabe told USA Today. The idea that the FBI or any other law enforcement agency is raiding a former president's house is stunning, period, and unprecedented, even for Trump. Historian Matthew Dallek told USA Today why it matters. A law enforcement action on the home of a former U.S. president has little precedent in American politics, if any. The news sent shockwaves through the political world on Monday, with Trump allies appearing on conservative media to blast the move, and Trump antagonists underscoring the potential peril to the nation's 45th president. I'm going to stand a little bit opposite most of you guys here, in the fact that I don't give a damn what this means about the former president of the United States. I care about what this means to the people of the United States. Specifically, the people who are political enemies of the current administration. I'm talking about the January 6th prisoners. I'm talking about the people who have that flag behind them. The people who dislike the government in general. The people who are complaining right now about the IRS and its advanced enforcement. What Merrick Garland and whichever federal judge he shopped for just showed by doing this raid is that they have no problem going after a political enemy in a partisan attack. That is something that even Trump himself shied away from. And that is something that they said outright that he would do. That was what they accused him of throughout the entirety of his presidency. Oh, well, he went to his rallies and he yelled, "Lock her up!" And he got his crowds to chant, "Lock her up." They're going to use the DOJ to go after political enemies. It's a banana republic. Well, guess what? Now they just did. And it wasn't Trump that did it. So the USA Today has to say. Here's what the Hill has to say. FBI raids Trump's Mar-a-Lago, from Rebecca Beach and Harper and Nedick. The FBI executed a search warrant on the former president's home in Florida on Monday. The ex-president said, lashing out at law enforcement for what he called political persecution. It's the worst, okay? We read the statement. After working with and cooperating with the relevant government agencies, this unannounced raid on my home was not necessary or appropriate. The remarkable execution of a search warrant at a former president's home comes as the Justice Department has accelerated its investigation into the January 6, 2021 selfie fest at the Capitol and the actions Trump took to overturn the 2020 elections to remain in power. It was not immediately clear what was examined during the search, nor what the search warrant specified, but Trump said law enforcement officials even broke into my beautiful, beautiful safe. The DOJ declined to comment. A former newspaper, the New York Times, reported the search appeared to be focused on records that Trump brought with him to Mar-a-Lago estate after leaving the White House. The search would appear to be the first of its kind against a former president, but it remains unclear whether it's prelude to criminal charges, another scenario without precedent in U.S. history. In order to have secured the search warrant, federal law enforcement would have had to show probable cause supporting their suspicion of criminal activity and get authorization from a federal magistrate judge. In recent weeks, the DOJ have been focusing on President Trump's efforts to remain in power through a false elector scheme, transmitting what campaign officials refer to as fake election certificates in order to reverse the 2020 election in key states won by the president. The department has reportedly convened a federal grand jury to investigate the scheme, in addition to the grand jury investigation into the January 6th attack. It has also previously executed search warrants on 2 lawyers who worked with the former president. The DOJ seized the phone of John Eastman, who crafted memos for the campaign detailing the false elector strategy, as well as a plan for then Vice President Pence to buck the ceremonial duty to certify the election. It also searched the home of Jeffrey Clark, an assistant attorney general Trump weighed installing as attorney general, so he could forward an investigation into his baseless claims of election fraud. Always got to put the editorial in there, The Hill, because The Hill is pretty much a left-wing rag at this point. But there are signs the department may have expanded its probe. Clearly. Last week, Trump former White House counsel Pat Cipollone was reportedly called to testify before a federal grand jury, as was his deputy Patrick Philbin. The 2 men may be able to offer a wide-ranging look at Trump's actions leading up to the January 6th. Cipollone pushed back against another plan by Trump campaign attorneys to seize voting machines. He also had concerns about the legality of Trump's plans to march to the Capitol on January 6th. According to testimony from White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson, which was all a lie, before the House Select Committee investigating the selfie fest. Kenneth Klukowski, a former deputy to Clark, also reported cooperating with the DOJ investigation. In his lengthy statement, Trump railed against the search, comparing it to Watergate. He's not wrong. Here, in reverse, Democrats broke into the home of the 45th President of the United States. The White House said late on Monday they did not have notice of the reported action. Yeah, okay. Two things. Number one, I don't believe that. And number two, that actually makes it worse. I'm going to tell you why that makes that worse, because if that's the case, that is just Garland going completely rogue against somebody who passed him over for a Supreme Court bid, a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court. Garland needs to recuse himself yesterday for this. So that's what we see from the Hill. CNN and FBI execute search warrant at Trump's Mar-a-Lago in document investigation. This got some new information. Christina Bobb, Trump's attorney, said the FBI seized documents. President Trump and his legal team have been cooperative with FBI and DOJ officials every step of the way. The FBI did conduct an unannounced raid and seized paper, Bobb said. There was a communication between the FBI and U.S. Secret Service before the search warrant was executed on Monday. A person familiar with the matter said, allowing for the FBI to access the estate without any complications. There is only a small Secret Service footprint at Mar-a-Lago when Trump is not there. CNN has reached out to the FBI for comment. The Justice Department declined to comment on CNN. A White House official said it was not notified about the search. President Biden, a senior administration official, said, was unaware of the search of Mar-a-Lago until after it was reported on the news. Well, even if that's technically a lie, they can come back out and say that's the truth because President Joe Biden is typically unaware of where he is at any given moment. Let's see what CNN has to say in their video commentary.
CNN's Caitlin Collins starts us off. Caitlin, what are you learning about this FBI operation?
John, it's a remarkable development with the former president himself confirming that the FBI has executed a search warrant on his home in Palm Beach, Florida today. He said in a statement that his beautiful home, Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, of course, which became his primary residence after he left the White House, is, quote, currently under siege, raided and occupied by a large number of FBI agents. He says after working and cooperating with the relevant government agencies, this unannounced raid on my home was not necessary or appropriate. John, he adds, quote, they even broke into my safe, and he compared this to Watergate, reverse Watergate, and maintains it's an effort to stop him from running for president in 2024. Of course, we should note we have now learned that this search warrant had to do with that investigation into how the former president handled potentially classified information, certainly sensitive information, when he left the White House. That is something we knew had already happened, that he had taken about 15 boxes with him to Mar-a-Lago when he left the White House in January of 2021. They delayed returning those boxes back to the National Archives, which wanted them, and we knew this had been under investigation because there had actually been a subpoena issued to the National Archives itself for what was included in these documents. They wanted to know what was in them, who boxed them up, who personally took them to Mar-a-Lago. So those have been major questions surrounding this. But this is a dramatic escalation for these FBI agents to go and execute a search warrant at the former president's primary residence. I will note, John, that tonight the Justice Department is not commenting when CNN has reached out for this. The Biden White House was also unaware that this was being conducted and say they found out when the rest of us did, which is when the former president confirmed this. I also want to note Trump was not present at Mar-a-Lago when this happened. He is at Trump Tower in New York. He was not there in in Palm Beach, where he often does not spend his summers. Clearly, though, the former president, is very unhappy about this and is saying he believes it was politically motivated as we are waiting to learn more about what exactly was behind this.
I want to ask about something else. You have CPAC going on this.
So that's what they had to say, and of course the DOJ doesn't have any comment about this. There's really nothing for them to comment for it. Here's one. In early June, a handful of investigators made a rare visit to the property seeking more information about potentially classified material from Trump's time in the White House that had been taken to Florida. The four investigators, including Jay Bratt, the chief of counterintelligence and export control section at the DOJ, sat down with two of Trump's attorneys, Bob and Evan Corcoran, according to a source present for the meeting. At the beginning of the meeting, Trump stopped and greeted the investigators near a dining room after he left without answering any questions. The investigators asked the attorneys if they could see where Trump was storing the documents. The attorneys took the investigators to the basement room where the boxes of materials were being stored, and the investigators looked around the room before eventually leaving, according to the source. Now, because we're talking about classified documents, so that seems to be the focus of what this particular investigation was. One thing to bring up and one thing to talk about with this is what they took. As I said, this is supposed to be focused on classified documents, but how do, in the middle of a raid that's probably going on fairly quickly, because I'm sure that news got there very quickly, that to the Donald, who could possibly get on an airplane and get down there quickly at some point, maybe not that quickly, I guess. I suppose it would still be a couple hours, but how would they have known what's classified and what isn't? Is there somebody out there who's above top secret cleared that can go in there and investigate this? Because I doubt that the majority of FBI agents have the security clearance to see what's in these documents. Or is it just a box and stuff and go? Are we going to start to see tax papers released by the DOJ? Like, oops, oh, hey, we found these tax returns in here. Oh, I guess, well, it would be such a shame if they got released. Oops. Or personal information or business dealings. When you're doing something like this, especially like this, it is very important to have a very narrow scope on your warrant. But you also have to have a certain person who has the clearance to understand and identify what's on the very narrow scope. So I think that there are going to wind up being some problems with this. And I also have the question now, because it's been about 12 hours. Has the Donald been home? Has he been able to go back in and assess what happened here, see the damage, etc.? This is, we're not going to do all 5 minutes of this, but we'll do some hen clucking here. This is what MSDNC had to say about it. This is going to be totally nonpartisan, I'm telling you. Get some volume
National Security Advisor was convicted, pled guilty in the end to what was then for him, he pleaded to a misdemeanor charge of the unauthorized removal and retention of classified material from the archives. And as I recall the Berger case, he actually deliberately went in there in search of very few documents, one or two that he felt were problematic for him, that he stuffed into inside his clothing and took out of the building. He got a fine of $50,000. He was sentenced to serve 2 years of probation, 100 hours of community service, and lost his law license in the process. And so, Andrew Weissman, that's the closest thing we have to any kind of precedent near any of this. But when are we going to learn from the Justice Department or from filings involving the search warrant what this was about? And it's one thing for the Justice Department to have this policy, which we all understand, about not commenting on investigations. But how about the first time in history that a president or former president's home has been subject to this kind of FBI search, including breaking into forced opening of the former president's safe? It seems that the Justice Department and the Attorney General have to at least consider saying something to the country about what happened today.
Look, I hear you, but I do think that there will be an enormous amount of pressure within the Justice Department to adhere to Justice Department rules and to view those rules and adherence to them as their salvation. That if you're trying to show that the Justice Department is apolitical and that they're playing this by the book, that they're not going to speak about somebody who was under investigation. And that is because of the tradition in this country that if you're under investigation but have not been charged, that you're entitled to not have the Justice Department run around slandering you. That was why, people reacted so vociferously to what Jim Comey did in July and October when he spoke about his own personal views about Hillary Clinton. People thought it, and I was one of them, thought that was outrageous and violated all of the rules of the Justice Department that Neil and Frank and I have lived by. So while we all have this desire to know what's going on, there is a principle at stake. And this is where you hope that Republicans understand that this is a question about the rule of law, that this is a proceeding that is done pursuant where people go to court, they get a court order, and this is not someone breaking into a safe or conducting a raid. It is conducting a search pursuant to a court-authorized search warrant. Now, the way that we could ultimately find out information about this is a number of ways. One, obviously, there could be charges. There's no question in my mind that Donald Trump is clearly the target of this investigation. It's not like they're going into Mar-a-Lago because they're interested in Rudy Giuliani or Sidney Powell or somebody else. I mean, this is clearly focusing on him. And eventually there could be charges. But there also could be a situation, as we've seen with John Eastman, the lawyer who came up with this cockamamie scheme for the vice president to not count votes, where John Eastman filed a motion challenging the search and repeatedly trying to get his property back. And that gave the public and us in the punditry a lot of information about what was going on. So there could be litigation prior to a charge that would give us more of a sense of what exactly the department has and why they decided to proceed this way. And my final point would be, if the Attorney General decided to proceed by a search warrant, not by subpoena, there has to be strong reason that he believed that there would be obstruction, that those documents would not be produced or they would disappear. This is not a step that you take lightly. I have been on the other side.
So there's some accuracy to what he's saying, and there isn't. As I said at the top of the show, they need to hope and pray that they have the goods. That this was worth it because, well, first and foremost, the way that this was done, rather than going through the subpoena process, rather than going through and, requesting documents, hey, can I have this, can I have that? They chose to go in, break into the home, break open safes, and raid the place. And some of that is going to be for show. And that's something that we've seen time and time again from the DOJ. And from this is the fact that, Roger Stone, they go in middle of the night, guns blazing with cameras out there. I'm a little surprised I haven't seen video of this, but the classified nature of the documentation tells me they might have realized that's probably not a good idea. With that being said, typically when they do it's middle of the night raid, they go in, they bust down the door, and they make a show out of going back and raiding a 75-year-old man, 78-year-old man, etc. They make a big production out of it. So I think that may be part of where the raid is coming from, but another part of that is to come back out and be able to tell the people who are going to question this, and even some people on the left that are questioning, like, oh, we had worries that he was just going to try to shield everything off of this, so we had to go in there dead of night, well, dead of the afternoon, but we had to go in there and raid and get this now while nobody was looking, without even making the attempt to do so. This is dangerous. From regular NBC, FBI search at Trump's Mar-a-Lago home tied to classified materials, sources say. From Mark Caputo and Ryan J. Riley. Former President Trump said Monday the FBI raided his home in Mar-a-Lago and even cracked the safe. Trump claimed in a written statement that the search, unprecedented in American history, was politically motivated. I want to see what the source was off this, otherwise we might be... let's see. A senior government official told NBC that the FBI was at Mar-a-Lago for the majority of the day and confirmed the search warrant was connected to the National Archives. Trump this year had to return 15 boxes of documents that were improperly taken from the White House, the National Archives and Records Administration, or NARA, said in February. In mid-January 2022, NARA arranged for the transport from the Trump Mar-a-Lago property in Florida to the National Archives of 15 boxes that contained presidential records. Following the discussions with President Trump's representatives in 2021, the National Archives said in a statement. The same month, the National Archives and Records admin asked the Justice Department to examine whether Trump's handling of the White House records violated federal law, a story first reported by the Washington Post, Where Democracy Goes to Die in Darkness, and subsequently confirmed by the NBC News sources. So that's what they're focusing with. From the Daily Wire, new details emerge about the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago, what they took from the property. Report. And this was at the top of their page when I signed in this morning. Agents with the Federal Bureau of Investigation took numerous boxes and documents from former President Trump's Florida home at Mar-a-Lago on Monday as part of a criminal investigation into allegedly mishandled classified national security information. Agents were reportedly at the property the entire day and were dressed in plain clothes, leading staff to believe they were U.S. Secret Service agents, which is why the news of executed search warrant did not leak, according to News Nation senior correspondent Brett Enton. Wow, that actually changes things a little bit there, because they're sitting here trying to hide this from the people who, do keep in mind, this is still a country club. Which means the members were probably out there golfing. I don't know what the weather was like in Florida yesterday, but the people were probably out there golfing, doing a round, tanning, sitting at the bar, doing small talk, doing rich people things. So they really went out of their way to try to hide this. Trump's Secret Service agents were notified about the raid only moments before it occurred, and Trump had lawyers present during the raid while he was at his residence in New York City. That's interesting. Because all the left-wing outlets were saying that they had hours of advance notice. Brian Enton, per sources, search warrants at Mar-a-Lago related to the retention of classified documents. FBI showed up at 9 a.m. and left at 6:30 p.m. Holy crap, they really were there all day. That's 9.5 hours. They were in plain clothes, so club staff likely thought they were Secret Service. That's why it didn't leak earlier. The FBI did not notify Secret Service about the raid until right before. Trump lawyers showed up during the raid. Safe, referred to in Trump's statement, was in his office, which is the old bridal suite above the ballroom. It is a hotel-style safe. FBI broke it open. FBI agents looked in all offices and safes on the property and took numerous boxes full of documents for them to sort through at the local South Florida FBI field office. They were not being judicious about what they took, a source told Fox News. They're doing a dirt digging aspect. They're not doing... If they took everything, they're not looking for classified documents. They are looking for something to leak to the public. The raid happened after Trump reportedly delayed turning the approximately 15 boxes back over to the National Archives until they became a serious legal risk to him. Some of the documents were reportedly marked as top secret. Federal prosecutors opened a grand jury investigation back in May into Trump over whether classified material that ended up at his home in Mar-a-Lago was mishandled. The main purpose of these types of investigations is usually for federal authorities to determine if any classified material was compromised so that intelligence officials can take steps to protect sensitive sources and methods. Persecutors are seeking to learn every aspect of how the documents were handled from the time the documents left the White House until they were returned to the National Archives. For persecutors to be able to prove that a crime was committed, they would need evidence showing the parties involved in removing the documents from the White House knew that the documents were classified and knew they were removing them would violate the law. Yes, intent. That's going to be the big part of this. Kevin McCarthy told President Biden's AG, Merrick Garland, that he needs to preserve all documents and clear his calendar for when Republicans win back control of the House of Representatives because Garland is going to be getting dragged before Congress to testify about the raid. I will believe that when I see it, because McCarthy himself is a swamp creature as well. I've seen enough, McCarthy said in a statement. The Department of Justice has reached an intolerable state of the weaponized politicization. When Republicans take back the House, we will conduct immediate oversight of the department, follow the facts, and leave no stone unturned. AG Garland, preserve your documents and clear your calendar, he added. So, not a lot of information with this, but some things to watch for and some things to go with when we start to talk about this. Now, with this, with Garland, and the weaponization, what have we seen? Federal charges against Chauvin and the other 3 officers, who, even though Chauvin was convicted, they had to make sure that he was extra super secret double convicted for the same crime. And the same thing with the 3 officers. Hankerson, we just saw that last week. And even though I'm in disagreement with my friend Rebecca over whether or not this was actually the DOJ going after people or whether this was a completely different crime, this is, especially with Hankerson being involved. If it was just the detectives, I wouldn't have thought twice about this because Brett Hankerson was involved, who was acquitted, wrongly by the way, on shooting wantonly through walls and through windows at people who were sleeping in adjacent apartments, firing a gun while he couldn't see what his clear target was. You know, what's the first rule of gun safety? Know your target and what's beyond it. They're going back after this. All the J6 defendants sitting in solitary without access to lawyers, without charges. And now this. This is a DOJ that is not shy about going after its political enemies. Not shy in the least. Unprecedented. We read about that already. We'll skip that one. Another one from our legal experts over at MSDNC, who are probably, they raided his home. They're gonna get him. They're gonna get him. They're gonna get him. They're gonna get him. Oh my God! What the FBI needed to have on Trump to obtain a search warrant to raid Mar-a-Lago. An adversarial DOJ, an adversarial attorney general, and a judge that they could shop for. That's what they needed to have off of that. But let's listen. But I'll say this before we go into this. The video above, which we're not going to watch, but even looking at the headline there, investigations linked to FBI raid on Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago home are unknown.
Former FBI official Frank Figliuzzi. Frank, thank you so much for joining us this evening on the Readout. You were the person that I wanted to talk to about this. What is the significance? I mean, you were in the FBI. I'm sure there are agents who woke up this morning and were thinking, I am going to be raiding the former president's house. That's got to be difficult, regardless of how you feel about the former president of the United States. What do you think the attitudes are going on in the FBI right now? Are they concerned that they think, oh my gosh, this is the beginning of what could be an absolutely serious investigation? Were people aware of this all along and were like, hey, this is just step one in finally bringing this person down? What do you think is sort of the internal rhetoric going on at the FBI right now about this unannounced raid?
So, Jason, yeah, not only did I spend 25 years in the FBI, but I spent a significant portion of it in the Miami field office, which is responsible, of course, for West Palm Beach and the Mar-a-Lago location. So, look, not a lot of time right now for internal introspection going on in the Miami field office and or any other agents from other field offices that came in, but rather let's do this job right. They clearly understand the public scrutiny that will be involved, the gravity of the situation, and of course what's coming next, which will be endless rhetoric from Donald Trump about how horrible the FBI is and how this is a targeted fishing expedition. What we don't know, of course, is really what the substance of this is. We don't know if this is connected to January 6th or whether this is connected to the National Archives investigation of the top secret and secret documents that Trump allegedly squirreled away at Mar-a-Lago. But it may be helpful, if you want, if you haven't done this already, to just walk through the process of a federal agent obtaining a search warrant. If you want to just go through that and what it means and what it doesn't mean. So it simply means that the agents decided, and of course at this level, when you're talking about a former president, this will be cleared at the highest level, not only of the FBI, but the U.S. Department of Justice, likely cross the desk of the Attorney General of the United States. And you have to...
Oh, you know it crossed the desk of that. Again, this is somebody who was passed over for the lifetime nomination. Let's see. I'll touch on this one here for just a moment. From the USA Today, after Trump's raid, supporters with signs, loud music, cruise past Mar-a-Lago. This is some of what was going on with this.
Yep, they went in. Nobody's even home.
What do we want?
Nobody's even
That's
home.
private property? Yeah,
Yes,
that's
that's
private property. Property rights. Why should we? No more Castro, no more Biden. Where you from? Welcome to our new communist, Mr. Biden. Yeah, their crime, the crime of the FBI to break into a private home. That's right. Run forward. Rabble, 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 rabble.
Take a Hunter, you know. He's awful. Hunter and Biden.
Hunter Biden. Hunter, the meth addict or
I
crack
don't want
addict.
a communist in this country. No way. No way.
Comunismo, no. They've already put one in. That's right.
So that is probably one of the more Florida scenes I've ever seen in my life. And they're bringing up some good points while they're out there and protesting, and they should be. And, I mean, something like this, again, it's something even leftoids can look at and say, hey, we might have a problem here. You know, I heard somebody out there saying, no more Castro out in the field. I'm thinking to myself, yeah, no more Castro. Because this is what communist dictatorships do. Make sure that their opposition can't get anywhere. Eric Trump says nothing could be found in the safe. Brian Kilmeade just spoke to Eric Trump. Nothing in the safe. The FBI agents, 30 approximately raided on behalf of the nation's archives. This is outrageous. Has to have come from the president and or someone in the White House. FBI agents who raided former President Trump's Florida home, Mar-a-Lago, broke into a safe only to find it empty, Trump's son Eric told Fox News Channel's Brian Kilmeade. Eric told the newsman 30 members of the FBI were involved in the raid and that it was to find documents that should have gone to the National Archives. It was not known if they retrieved the documents, but whatever they sought was not in the safe, according to the 45th president's son. Nothing was in the safe, Kilmeade said, quoting Eric. According to the New York Times, former President Trump has delayed returning 15 boxes of the material that have been requested by officials with the National Archives, but ultimately delivered them in January. The documents were reportedly taken to a sensitive compartmented information facility in the D.C. area. This unfortunate attempt by the media to twist a story along with the help of anonymous sources, because they're always anonymous, is just another sensationalized distraction of an otherwise uneventful effort to persevere the legacy of President Trump and a good faith effort to ensure the fulfillment of the Presidential Records Act. Taylor Budowich, the Trump spokesman, said it the following month. Sadly, the business of news has become reliant on the next manufactured Trump investigation, and so here we are, a disgrace. We saw the crowds.
Developing story, the FBI raiding the Mar-a-Lago home of former President Trump. Trump was not there when federal agents moved in.
We're told their interest lies in boxes of documents he brought back after leaving the White House. Local 10's Christian De La Rosa is live in Palm Beach with what he's learned. Christian.
Well, I can tell you the former president was not in Mar-a-Lago at the time of this raid around 10 o'clock this morning. We've also learned that the search is connected to some 15 boxes of documents believed to have been brought here to Mar-a-Lago by Trump. The documents in those boxes believed to be classified information. Now, I can tell you just about a block away from Mar-a-Lago here, this has become what looks like a political rally here. Most of the people here are Trump supporters, but not everybody. Monday's FBI raid of former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home.
You're not American.
Quickly brought out supporters.
That's a traitor.
And opponents.
He separated all of us.
I love this guy. He's done so much for this country, more than any president in the United States.
It's always really weird when they come to and they figure out how to record this out to where you only get sound from one channel and then only get sound from the other channel. But yeah, it's kind of telling too how popular this president actually is. And by the way, being rated by one of the least popular presidents in U.S. history. In order to do so, he's so popular that there's an impromptu Trump rally outside of his property while the FBI is there. From the Orlando Sentinel, Ron DeSantis, GOP slam FBI raid on Trump's Mar-a-Lago, from Roger Simmons. Ron DeSantis led a chorus of Florida Republicans criticizing an FBI raid on former President's Mar-a-Lago residence, questioning if the U.S. had turned into a banana republic. Turned into? Really? The FBI raid on Monday was part of a probe into whether the former president took classified documents from the White House to his Palm Beach residence, the Associated Press reported. The FBI and Justice Department have not confirmed the search. It marked a dramatic escalation in law enforcement scrutiny of Trump and comes amid a separate but intensifying probe into efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. DeSantis now running for re-election in Florida's governor, but also with an eye on the White House run possibly against Trump, AstroTurf, slammed the FBI raid but never mentioned the former president by name. The raid of Mar-a-Lago is another escalation of weaponization of federal agencies against the regime's political opponents. While people like Hunter get treated with kid gloves, DeSantis tweeted from his personal account, not his official Florida governor's account. Now the regime is getting another 87,000 IRS agents to wield against its adversaries, Banana Republic. DeSantis' opponents for governor, Democrat side, condemned his response. Nikki Fried, because of course it's Nikki Fried, responded on Twitter with, "Your tweet is another escalation of your pathetic loyalty to an insurrectionist over country and the rule of law." Yeah, you can do inflammatory things all you want, Nikki. You're still not going to be the governor. You're 13 points behind Christ, who doesn't have a chance. U.S. Rep. Charlie Crist, another Democrat running to defeat DeSantis in November, chimed in on Twitter as well, with Ron DeSantis attacks law enforcement for legally raiding Mar-a-Lago, while he's yet to say anything about the heinous Nazis in our state who've been rallying in support of him, also attacking a private company, Disney, for free speech is about as banana republic as it gets. Raising his nation profile, DeSantis will be traveling across the nation this month to campaign for some of the top Republican deniers of President Biden's victory. I love the editorialism, but it's the Orlando Sentinel. What do you expect? Rick Scott, the FBI's raid of Mar-a-Lago is incredibly concerning, especially given the Biden admin's history of going after parents and other political opponents. This is third world country stuff. We need answers now. The FBI must explain what they are doing today and why. Rubio, after today's raid on Mar-a-Lago, what do you think the left plans to use those 87,000 new IRS agents for? Now, one of the things that I thought, and the way that I set this all up, by the way, when we talk about the, looking at right-wing media, Hunter Biden, the carried interest loophole, the new bill that brings in 87,000 agents, is that a lot of this was done right now to distract from the 87,000 new IRS agents, so people would stop talking about this here. But I mean, Rubio brings us back around and brings us in perfectly. And I don't compliment Marco Rubio very often, because he's another of the Bushite war pig establishment. But when he gets it right, I'm going to say, Marco, you got it right. Absolutely. If the DOJ will go after the president, the former president of the United States, in this much of a manner, do you really think 87,000 IRS agents are going to be used for a couple thousand billionaires? And it's not just Republicans or MAGA people, by the way, who are on the chopping block. Although, if you try to talk on Twitter as a person who dislikes the government from all angles, you'll be lumped in with the MAGA because you are the enemy. I was 15 days away from not voting for a president this past time through in 2020. In the last 15 days was the day that I decided to vote for Trump, but it was very reluctantly because he is a spending spree that could not bring himself to get reined in the way that he needed to as a spending spree. It was in the last 15 days that I did. I was not a fan of the Trump presidency and the spending that it went along with. I liked the media coverage, the way that he broke the people in the media. I liked the tax cuts, but man, that tax cut needed to come with a spending cut. It needed to, and it didn't. But I am lumped in with the religious MAGA crowd that chants MAGA and hopes that their talisman of Trump will cure them of all ailment. I'm lumped in with that same crowd because it is an enemy of the establishment left, the Biden left. The same people who think that Bernie was a right-wing plant to go back in to try to destroy the Democrat Party. And if you think that they're going to stop at that president, they're not. Anybody who challenges their power, do we have video of Bongino? Yeah, we do. Dan Bongino got into this as well. Dan Bongino explodes over FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago, offers solution to fix the problem. I've not pre-watched this, so I'm kind of curious what this is. Fox News contributor Dan Bongino erupted Monday afternoon after the FBI executed a search warrant at the Florida home of former President Trump. The investigation is centered around classified material that Trump brought with him to Mar-a-Lago. Earmuffs, for those of you who have the kids in the room. I'm going to quote this directly. Yeah, you think this is some third world bullshit right here. Let me say it again. Third world bullshit. I mean every word of it, Bongino said. I don't care that it's cable news. I was a federal agent. I raised my right hand and swore to protect and defend the Constitution, and I love this country. Let's listen.
Let's go to Dan Bongino, the host of Unfiltered on Saturday nights. Dan, your quick emotion. I think everyone's a little emotional here about this raid.
Yeah, I mean, you think? This is some third world bullshit right here. Let me say it again. Third world bullshit. I mean every word of that. I don't care that it's cable news. I was a federal agent. I raised my right hand. And I swore to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And I love this country. This is a freaking disgrace. A disgrace. We don't live in Cuba. We don't live under Kim Jong-un. We live in a constitutional republic, a representative democracy. You have a bunch of FBI agents raiding the home of a former president because they don't like his politics? Are you kidding me? You've spent this whole show, Jesse, and I've spent my entire time either on Fox or on my podcast exposing the left for claiming Russia interfered in an election as Hillary Clinton paid off a bunch of foreign agents, her team, literally to fabricate a story that occupied the nation for 4 years. What's she doing right now? Getting a manicure in freaking Chappaqua. She's not doing squat. Nothing. Hunter Biden is having sex on tape while doing crack. And what is he doing? He's living in a Malibu mansion. And yet the president, the former president, who, whether you agree with him or not on his claims about the election, whether you agree or not, we still live in a country where you are allowed to challenge an election. There's even a process, the ECA, the Electoral Count Act. You may not like it, but it's a process. How do I know it's a process? Because some people are trying to reform it. You may not like it, but now you send the FBI. Let me tell you something. I have paid due deference to the FBI for a long time, and a lot of listeners didn't like it because I work with some very good people over there who've since retired. The management of the FBI has now shredded any single sliver of credibility this agency had left. Nobody will take them seriously from this point on. It is over. You've heard the examples. Stone, Manafort, Cohen, over and over. Are they good guys? Are they bad guys? I don't know. I don't care. I don't know them. All I'm telling you is you cannot tell me we still live in a constitutional republic and not the freaking third world when you have Hillary Clinton paying foreign agents to interfere with an election, people lying under oath repeatedly, Hunter Biden doing crack on tape. And what happens? Where are the federal agents? They're not in Malibu. They're not in Chappaqua. They're in Mar-a-Lago. This is some third world garbage that happened tonight. And I'm telling you, the FBI management, here's a solution. Last thing. We have now got to win in 2022. You have no choice now, folks. Oh, we don't like the swampy Republicans. I don't like them either. Republicans may not be the solution to your problems, but Democrats are certainly the cause of all your problems right now. If there was ever a clarion call to remove your ass from the seat and go vote in 2022, this is it.
Oops, I muted it out to take a drink again. And that's, Bongino is not at all wrong with any of this. This is scary stuff. I am not going to lie and say that I'm not going to be looking over my shoulder from this point on. Because I have said terrible things about the current government of this country. I've said awful things about the government of this country. Because I don't care for them. And I'd like to see them disbanded. Those words alone probably have me on a list somewhere ready to go get raided or shot by an FBI agent. From a DOJ that now feels that even without any other charge, they have the mandate and the authority to go back and go after their political opponents. So, all right. Let's look at, we're up on the clock right now, so let's look at a couple of things that they might be trying to distract you from. We're going to go next right over to the Daily Wire again. Not just a right-wing media story, CNN is suddenly worried about Hunter Biden could derail 2024. From Virginia Kruta. CNN anchor Brian Stelter, I thought his show got canceled, conceded Sunday that President Biden's embattled son Hunter was more than just a right-wing media story, and that concerns over his foreign business dealings could potentially weigh down on a 2024 re-election bid. Yeah, they're getting ready to throw this guy under the bus. Stelter broached the subject with Michael LaRosa, a former special assistant to the president. During Sunday's broadcast of Unreliable Sources, and LaRosa made it clear that he believed Biden would and should run for a second term in the White House because that means that they can't go back and investigate Hunter without being accused of what we're accusing the DOJ of doing right now. See, as long as Joe is the president and alive and upright, he has executive privilege. Let's listen.
Let me ask one sizzle question.
Yeah.
Maureen Dowd's column in this morning's New York Times basically says that Joe Biden should not run for re-election. This has been a narrative for months, and it's getting louder and louder, including from some Democratic lawmakers saying Biden should basically hang it up and say he's a lame duck and not run 2024. So where do you come down on this as a former White House aide?
Oh, I hope he runs. And I know he's going to run. I think he's planning to run, as he said many times. But look, I think that this is arriving right on time. It's Democratic bedwetting time. In 1995, right around this time, R.W. Apple wrote a piece in the New York Times.
Wait, are you saying the media is predictable?
Very predictable.
This
is very
but
cyclical.
It's different this time.
Bill
given
Clinton,
Biden's
Barack
age.
Obama, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama,
Well,
they all
Biden's
said.
age makes it different.
Well, to you guys, but after you look at the week he just had and those wins that he racked up while he had COVID, I don't see why he wouldn't run. I haven't heard the reason why.
What about Hunter? Hunter under federal investigation. Charges could be coming at any time. This is not just a right-wing media story. This is a real problem for the Bidens. Could he decide not to run for re-election given his son?
Look, they make decisions as a family, and they will make that decision when it's time. But like you said, he intends to run.
Do you think they've talked about it yet?
No. The president's doing his job. He's doing his work. He's not focused on that. It's 19 months. Why would he be doing that?
Okay, so you're saying the press is getting ahead of...
Way ahead. Look, there's more work to do. It's been 19 months, and, he intends to run, like you said. But I think the focus should be from the press on how what he is doing is affecting people out in the country. Because these are things that Democrats have wanted to get done for a long time. And in just a week, veterans, manufacturing, the unemployment rate. It's been remarkable to see a president rack up so many substantive wins, as even your anchors have noted in the last year.
Michael, thank you very much for coming on.
Yes, of course.
Great talking with you.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Coming up, these news outlets.
What wins? Gas prices came down into a point that they're going to have to be forced to go back up unless you really, really open up the drilling in this country and drill to a level that you've never, ever drilled before in the history of this country. It's the only way you're going to keep gas prices from hitting 6, 7, 8 while you refill the strategic reserves. And a gas tax holiday that's going to affect us on our other taxes. And a spending package that's going to inflate the currency and affect us on our taxes as well. What wins? Also, is there anybody on CNN that is a male that doesn't dance around off camera and pretend to be a taffy apple? And as far as Hunter goes, I've said this from all the way back before Joe was honk selected as president, honk. I've said this all the way back, going from the beginning. As soon as I first heard about Erica Marshmallow, as soon as I first heard about that story, the very first thing that I thought was, they're going to run Joe Biden as president to make sure he gets executive privilege and do everything they can to make sure he gets in, because there are a lot more people that have their hand in that cookie jar than just Joe and Hunter and Jill. There are a lot of high-profile people on the Democrat side that have their hand in that cookie jar. So, what else? Here's one about the Inflation Reduction Act that they probably don't want you to ever talk about again. Hence now the debate going back around the president. Carried interest provision is cut from Inflation Reduction Act. How this tax break works and how it benefits high-income taxpayers. From Greg Iankershi. Senate Democrats passed a historic package of climate, healthcare, and tax provisions on Sunday, but one proposed tweak to the tax code. A modification of the so-called carried interest rule didn't survive due to objections from Sinema, whose support was essential to pass the Inflation Reduction Act in an evenly divided Senate. I think that we should start on this program referring to this as the Inflation Production Act. The bill now heads to the House, which is expected to pass it this week. Many Democrat opponents refer to the lower tax rate on carried interest as a loophole that allows wealthy private equity, hedge fund, and other investment managers to pay a lower tax rate than some of their employees and other American workers. Well, yeah, it's because their earnings are not salary, they're literal capital gains. If you know anything about investing, it makes sense, but most of the opponents of this don't know anything about investing. It's a real rich benefit for the wealthiest of Americans, said Steve Rosenthal, a senior fellow at Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center. Why should a private equity manager be able to structure his or her compensation with low tax gains? That seems wrong. Because it's a capital gain. That's why. Carried interest is a form of compensation paid into investment executives like private equity, hedge fund, and other venture capital managers. The managers receive a share of the fund's profits, typically 20% of the total, which is divided among them proportionally. The profit is called carried interest and is also known as carry or profits interest. Yeah, it's a capital gain. Here's where the tax controversy lies. The money is considered a return on investment, as such managers pay a top 20% of federal tax rate on those profits rather than a federal tax rates of up to 37% that apply to compensation paid as a wage or salary. That preferential 20% tax rate is the same as long-term capital gains, which applies to investments like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and real estate held for more than a year. Carried interest accounts for the vast majority of compensation paid to managing partners of private equity funds. According to Jonathan Goldstein, who leads America's private equity practice, Hedrick & Struggles, an executive search firm. So, with that, and one of the things they don't talk about is the fact that there is the possibility of a loss. And the government doesn't pay them back for the loss. They just pay on the gains at the lower rate. But yes, a carried interest is the literal definition of a capital gain. And what some of these people don't seem to understand is that no matter how much you try to spin this, not everybody works for a salary. Not everybody works for an hourly wage. Like these people run out and try to explain to their constituents, oh, well, they're just getting paid hand over fist. Well, no, they're getting a return on their investment, the same way that you would if you bought a house for $60K in 1980 and sold it for $450K in 2020. That's $390,000 that you would have to pay capital gains on at the capital gains rate, not the income rate, not your salary rate, but the capital gains rate. All right, what else can we get through? Oh, this is also fun talking about that. Senate Democrats adopted a don't test, don't tell COVID policy to rush through inflation bill. You can bring your ventilator and still vote. Because of course they did. Why wouldn't they? From Chris Enlow. Senate Democrats allegedly adopted the unofficial new COVID protocols ahead of their push to pass the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, the Inflation Production Act. The Senate, which is controlled by Dems, unofficially adopted a don't test, don't tell COVID policy ahead of last weekend's marathon session that resulted in the Inflation Reduction Act being passed. They're not going to delay if a member has got COVID, a top Senate aide told Puck News before the vote. Counterparts are saying they're not going to test anymore. It's not an official mandate, but we all know we're not letting the pinko pox get in the way. The deal's happening, less testing, just wear a mask and get it done. Another source jokingly told Puck News that if a Democrat senator caught COVID, you can bring your ventilator and still vote. The unofficial protocol modification is notable because the Senate, unlike the House, does not permit voting by proxy. Thus, in order to cast a vote, senators must be present in the Senate. Perhaps the protocol change became necessary after multiple Democrat senators tested positive for the pinko pox in recent weeks. More positive tests would have derailed Democrats' plan to pass the Inflation Production Act, delaying any potential boost ahead of the 2022 midterm elections. The purported change underscores hypocrisy from Democrats, especially among those who were critical of Republicans for not enacting or abiding by strict pinko pox mitigation tactics. In one specific instance, the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness. Oh, the ambulance is coming. Reported in October 2020 that a pinko pox outbreak among senators could have derailed the confirmation process of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. The Post reported the Judiciary Committee, which was then controlled by Republicans, was considering holding a vote with ill senators voting from visitors' galleries above the floor so they can maintain distance. At the time, Chuck U. Schumer, who is now Senate Majority Leader, blasted Republicans for moving forward with Barrett's nomination despite the alleged risks. The Republican leadership has truly lost touch with reality if it's contemplating marching COVID-stricken members to the Senate to rush through a Supreme Court nominee who could strip health care from 20 million Americans, Schumer said. But I'm sure they don't want to talk about that either. Also, guess who else got the pinko pox? Brady Leonard tweets out, "They just read the line. They don't even improv a little. They just read it like a hostage letter." Governor Gretchen Whitmer. "This evening, I tested positive for COVID-19. Thankfully, I'm only experiencing mild symptoms after being fully vaccinated and twice boosted. I encourage my fellow Michiganders to get vaccinated and boosted too. My full statement is below." Full statement. "This evening I tested positive for the pinko pox. Thankfully, I'm only experiencing mild symptoms after being fully vaccinated and boosted twice. After speaking with a state doctor, I will follow the proper guidance and protocols while maintaining a remote schedule to continue getting things done for the people of Michigan. I last tested this afternoon when I tested negative. Following standard protocol, all of my close contacts from today will be informed. I'm grateful for the support of my family, my staff, and the vaccine for offering me robust protection against the virus. I look forward to getting back to work in person, meeting with constituents, and keeping Michigan on the move. I encourage my fellow Michiganders to get vaccinated and boosted." So, the top comment on here. "I'm officially pregnant. Thank you, Pfizer, for birth control, because it would have been triplets if I hadn't taken your medicine. It's a cult. I didn't see that before. That's funny. But, of course, my first question is always, what meeting is Gretchen trying to get out of right now? Alright, it is 9:30. We've got to do Twitter trending and head out of here today. And I got to go vote in my primary. As if you are in a state that has not done so already, you should be doing so as well. It's interesting. Apparently the name of the judge has been released. I don't know who it is, but same Brady Leonard we just talked about, tweets out, "Are we allowed to talk about how the judge who signed off on the raid was Epstein's lawyer? This is wild. I assume the worst of government at all times, but even my own extraordinary radical standards, this is insanely messed up." That's interesting. I'm going to need to explore that and figure out what's going on with that, but instead, we're going to go on to the Twitter Explore page and talk about what's trending right now. So, as we do on Tuesday, we go through the Twitter trending and talk about what it is that Twitter and the public thinks that we should be talking about instead of what we actually did talk about. So, number 1 in sports, Serena Williams. In Vogue September issue, Serena Williams prepares to say farewell to tennis on her own terms and in her own words. "It's the hardest thing I could ever imagine," she says. "I don't want it to be over, but at the same time, I'm ready for what's next." Isn't Serena Williams in her 40s? She's older than I am. I don't know by how much. Because they were already tennis stars when I was still a teenager. Okay, she's closer to my age than I thought she was, but not by much. September 26, 1981. She is 40 years old. And obviously I was born in 1984. So I am 38. She is 2.5 years older than I am. I thought she was older than that. Although, again, as an athlete, that's probably time. She comes out on the top. She comes out as probably one of the better known and top ranked players in the world. I mean, nobody else could stand up to her. We'll do the DNA test later. So, yeah, it looks like that's going to probably change tennis and the rankings for a little while at least. Number 2, Roquan. Ian Rappaport tweets out, Bears All-Pro linebacker Roquan Smith has requested a trade. Don't worry, Roquan Smith. I would do everything I could to get out of Chicago, too. Roquan Smith is Roquan Smith. The first round pick could be anything. It could even be Roquan Smith. Oh, I remember that from that episode, too. That episode of Family Guy. Lois, a boat is just a boat. But the mystery box could be anything. It could even be a boat. You know how much we've always wanted one of those? Nobody wants to be there. Robinson Force is way off. Hicks Force is way off. It's not just talent that's the problem for the Bears. It's the toxic culture. Bears should take what they can get for Roquan and work on building a new culture with people that don't hate it there. Well, getting out of Soldier Field would probably be a first step too, or moving Soldier Field. I mean, you've got all this west suburbs where most of the universe still considers that to be Chicago. You could literally put Soldier Field and Streamwood and nobody would know the difference. Outside the people who live in Chicago proper, nobody would know the difference. Bears lose Roquan to go from the worst team in the league to the worst team in the league. I haven't even followed football since they put the BLM stuff outside. After St. Jacob, hallowed be his name, was paralyzed. And even I know that the Bears still suck. Tuesday vibe we skip. So the third trend we will do today is hashtag Book Lovers Day. Oh, jeez. Elmo wants to thank all of Elmo's friends for helping Elmo become a better reader. Thank you, Mr. Farrell. Happy Book Lovers Day. Of course, it's Sesame Street. Misty, happy Book Lovers Day. Apparently today is Book Lovers Day, and I've never heard of this before. There are perhaps no days of our childhood we lived so fully as those we spent with our favorite book. I need to finish the book I've been working on for over a year, so I can go on to other books like 1984, which I've never read, but I need to. Ted Roosevelt reading a book versus the disgraced Franklin Delano. Alright. The fifth trend today, which I'm actually a little surprised it's not the first, number 5, is Trump. With a lot of people talking about what happened here. Andy Ostrom, fuck him, fuck his whining, fuck his poor little victim, bullshit. Sticks, any doubt that Trump really is trying to outbend the corruption in our system should be dissipated by now. If not, well, you're too far gone to bother reasoning with him. Hashtag Trump. Trump 2024. Sticks also goes on. We're now in the 6th year of transparent and oft-debunked propaganda, non-stop hit jobs, limitless and inevitably fruitless investigation shams against Trump, and all of a sudden I'm supposed to believe this time isn't BS. Hashtag MAGA. Hashtag Trump. That's about all. Peace out. Dinesh D'Souza, if they could do it to him, none of us is safe. And there's Quest Fanning, contemporary number 642. I guess we do use the DOJ for political enemies. Hashtag Trump. Todd Starnes, the FBI just declared war on MAGA. And Sticks did a Substack. So, yeah, there are a lot of people that are talking about this right now. Oh, look, they shaved him bald and took his toupee off. Ha 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 ha. Dude, the left can't meme. And of course, lock down the comment section. That is at Talitha Dragonfly. If you guys do want to quote tweet this because you can't comment on it. Meanwhile, I'm going to go put this into show suggestions for Porch Boys. Alright, and the last one that we will do is number 6 trending, which is our number 5th. Issey Miyake. Issey Miyake, Japanese fashion designer and founder of the namesake fashion brand, has died at age 84, local media reports. I don't know who this is because I've never followed fashion in my life, but this also looks kind of weird. So this guy's apparently a fashion designer, but all the fashion that I see is stuff that I would never want to see in a fashion show, so apparently he likes boobs though. Well, I guess we send Issey Miyake out with Godspeed and hope that he finds peace in his next life. Being Japanese, I don't believe that he is Christian, because that's typically a Buddhist society. But I do hope that he finds peace in whatever his next life brings off of this. And I hope that he gets better taste in fashion as well. He apparently likes pleats. Sometimes when we do Twitter trending, it's stuff that I know all about, and sometimes it's something that I've never heard of. Actually, oftentimes it's something that I've never heard of. Because I don't do K-pop and I don't do fashion. All right, we're done. That was an interesting show, and as predicted, we spent almost the entire day talking about the raid. But yeah, there's definitely some stuff to go off with that. Where's the outro? There it is. So with that, we head out of here. I go grab a piece of egg bake out of the fridge and run over to my polling place just down the road, and then off to work I go. We'll be back here tomorrow with more headlines, probably talking a lot more about the raid, but hopefully with some other stuff going on here as well, because again, as I said at the top of the show, do not be distracted by this. The Democrats just passed $740 billion in unfunded spending and hired 87,000 new people to go after you as a political enemy to fund it. So do keep that in mind. We'll be talking about that. Hopefully there's some, news about what's going on with that. We'll talk about Mar-a-Lago. We'll talk about what's going on there. We will talk about whatever else comes up on the news, and we will do something that restores my faith in humanity, which, by the way, is already sitting over here in my left screen. I found thing I like and thing that I hate, and thing I'm thankful for / thing that restores my faith in humanity already earlier on in the week. So we'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about everything else that goes along with this and the news for the day, plus the Dow and the finance. Looking forward to seeing you guys here tomorrow morning for more of this, fun, for more of what's going on here. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.